entire Indiana Fever roster because they had so many injuries. They really did a great job of staying engaged with their season. I can really only imagine for a player like Caitlin, you come off your college season, epic. You go straight to your WNBA season, you finish a first teamer. You have this long off season where you probably can't wait to get back on the court, only to have like a couple of injuries, sideline or the ins and the outs, and then eventually being completely out. That is a challenge for a player.
Sue Bird made one thing crystal clear. The veterans will set the tone. Not the coaches, the veterans, the players who've been around the USA basketball system before, who know how things work, who understand the hierarchy. And this is where the red flags start popping up, because when you actually look at who's at this camp, the narrative doesn't line up with reality. Paige Bueckers is reportedly being positioned as a point guard for Team USA, despite never having played a single WNBA game. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark just completed one of the most statistically dominant rookie seasons in league history. First team All-WNBA, league leader in assists at 8.4 per game, a single-season assist record with 337. She took Indiana from a lottery to the playoffs and won a postseason game. Yet the messaging coming out of camp feels designed to minimize her role, not elevate it, instead of building around the league's best playmaker. The focus is on veterans teaching younger players how things work, as if Caitlin hasn't already proven she belongs at the highest level.
And lead ups. And I think, to circle back on your question, for the young players, it's just a great opportunity to get their first feel, to get their first taste. And the other beautiful part about USA basketball, this is when the veterans really come alive, right? This is when they can be a huge part of setting that tone, not just the coaches, but those vets. They've been there, they know what it's like. And with the way that they act, maybe with the way that they can be vocal, they're going to...
That pause wasn't accidental. It wasn't someone gathering their thoughts or taking a breath. That hesitation was calculated. Sue Bird was asked a direct question about Caitlin Clark's return from injury, and instead of talking about Caitlin's on-court impact, she carefully redirected the answer towards staying engaged from the sidelines. In poker terms, that's called a tell. And it tells us a lot about what's really going on behind the scenes at Team USA camp. Caitlin Clark just arrived in North Carolina for what should have been a defining moment, her first real step into international basketball, a chance to showcase her talent on a global stage. But from the very beginning, something about this setup feels off. The messaging, the structure, the coaching dynamics, none of it feels centered on maximizing the league's most productive young star. And Sue Bird, as general manager, unintentionally exposed some uncomfortable truths in this interview that make the entire situation feel more questionable than reassuring.
To the Stephanie White stuff, how did she get here?
I was wondering, just you said you sent out a lot of invites and looking at the roster that's going to be in Durham this weekend. Why was it important for y'all to have Juju Watkins in this environment, knowing that, she is not able to really practice or play or participate in drills right now, still recovering? What kind
of Jackie Powell?
Hi, Sue. Thanks so much for taking the time. I'm just curious, what went into how you selected Kara's assistants?
Yeah, Kara Lawson, the head coach of Duke. They're terrible, by the way. How did you come to the conclusion of getting the assistants in Stephanie White?
Here's the part that should genuinely concern everyone. Stephanie White isn't just coaching, she's auditioning. These court coach roles aren't finalized yet. White is trying to secure a permanent assistant spot for the World Cup staff. How do coaches prove value at camps like this? By fitting players into systems, by showing control, by elevating familiar relationships. White spent 5 years deeply connected to the UConn ecosystem. Paige Bueckers is part of that same pipeline. Caitlin Clark is not. And when you understand how deeply relationship networks influence USA basketball, the dynamics here become impossible to ignore.
Cool, thank you.
We will go to Sabrina.
You mentioned everyone's here together, but just looking at the roster, there's obviously a lot of players who potentially would be in consideration for the World Cup who aren't at camp right now. And I'm wondering, the men's side has had some issues getting players to show up for off years. Is that something that
really been, the situation for so long? That's why we try to get multiple camps in throughout a year, because you do want to you want everybody to get a taste of it so you can have carryover, right? So by the time you do get to a World Cup, people will have been involved at some point to have, again, that feel for it. But I don't foresee it being, to use your words, similar to the men. That hasn't been my experience in the past. It's not even my experience right now.
Listen closely to how Sue Bird talks about Caitlin's injuries. She praises Caitlin's mental toughness. her professionalism, her willingness to stay engaged while sidelined. All fair points. But what's missing is far more important than what's said. There's no acknowledgement of how Caitlin got hurt. No discussion of the heavy minutes she played, 35.4 per game, second highest in the league. No mention of her playing through hip and back issues for weeks. No accountability for workload decisions made under Stephanie White's system. Caitlin came straight from a grueling college season into one of the heaviest workloads in the WNBA, and her body eventually broke down. Now the same decision makers are back in charge of her usage.
I think it's Nate, it's Natalie Nakase, and Stephanie White.
Yeah, so they're technically court coaches. I'm getting used to all the lingo also. And it's really, the assistants don't get picked or like officially chosen until much closer to the World Cup.
Oh, so they just are they just here for camp? I'm hoping Stephanie White is only here for camp. I hope she's not going to be around for the real thing. Keep talking, Sue. Keep talking.
So there's a lot of time, a lot of buildup. Some of it is, if you look at past coaching staffs, there's been a mix of WNBA and college. Obviously, this camp is in December. You're not going to get college coaches. That's likely not going to happen. So luckily, we're able to tap into what is this newer crop with Nate and Natalie of WNBA coaches. Of course, Steph's been in the WNBA for a while, but none have had a ton of USA basketball experience. So it's wonderful to get them in. We had a coaches meeting today, and just kind of watching everybody come together and learn, you got to learn the FIBA rules. You got to learn, what it's about, but also being able to showcase themselves as assistants, obviously.
From the moment Caitlin arrived at camp, the conversation shifted away from celebrating her talent and toward managing narratives. Coaching structures, veteran leadership, Paige's role, control. It doesn't feel organic, it feels curated. Team USA basketball is supposed to be a meritocracy. The best players should lead. Production should matter more than relationships. But when pipelines dominate decision-making, merit gets compromised. Caitlin Clark earned her place through performance alone. And instead of building around that reality, the system appears more focused on fitting her into an existing power structure. Caitlin is walking into a political environment, not just a basketball camp. One where minutes, roles, and voices carry implications beyond the court. If USA basketball prioritizes protecting networks over maximizing talent, they risk sabotaging their own future. Watch the minutes. Watch who runs the offense. Watch whose voice carries weight, because that will tell you whether this camp is about winning gold or about protecting control.
The players and the talent. So it wasn't.
From the very moment Caitlin Clark stepped into Team USA camp, something subtle but unmistakable shifted. The conversation around her wasn't framed the way you'd expect for the most productive rookie the league has ever seen. Instead of focusing on how her skill set could elevate the entire roster, the messaging immediately pivoted towards structure, hierarchy, and management. That shift matters because it reveals what this camp may truly be about. Rather than celebrating Caitlin's elite playmaking, her historic assist numbers, or her ability to bend defenses in ways few players can, the narrative became about fitting in, about learning how things are done, about understanding roles. That framing subtly repositions her, not as a centerpiece, but as someone who must be integrated carefully into an already established power structure. And that's where the real issue begins. Team USA basketball has always claimed to operate as a meritocracy. The best players play. Production earns opportunity. Performance dictates leadership. But when you strip away the slogans and examine how decisions are actually made, a different reality starts to emerge. One where relationships, familiarity, and long-standing pipelines quietly influence who gets trusted, who gets empowered, and who gets positioned as the future face of the program. Caitlin Clark did not come through those pipelines. She didn't grow up inside the USA basketball system. She didn't come from the traditional collegiate power networks that have historically fed into Team USA. She earned her place the hard way, through overwhelming production, undeniable impact, and numbers so loud they couldn't be ignored. That should have made her untouchable. Instead, it seems to have made her inconvenient, because Caitlin represents something the system isn't fully comfortable with, a star who doesn't need permission. Her game forces change. Her presence demands offensive adjustment. You don't simply plug Caitlin Clark into an existing system and keep everything the same. If you truly want to maximize her value, the system has to bend around her. And systems that have been in place for decades don't like to bend. So what happens instead? The language shifts. The focus becomes control. Veterans are emphasized. Hierarchy is reinforced. The message is clear without ever being said out loud. This is not about reinventing Team USA. It's about preserving it. And when you hear repeated references to learning from the veterans, earning trust, and staying engaged, you have to ask a difficult question. Why is the league's most proven young playmaker being talked about like a developmental project? Caitlin Clark already proved she can run an offense at the highest level. She already proved she can carry a franchise. She already proved she can make teammates better. These aren't theoretical traits. They're documented facts. Yet the environment she's walked into feels less like an opportunity to unleash her talent and more like a test of her willingness to conform. That's not accidental. That's institutional behavior. USA basketball isn't just managing basketball games. It's managing optics, influence, and long-term control. Decisions made at camps like this echo forward into World Cups, Olympic rosters, endorsement alignments, and legacy narratives. And when a player as influential as Caitlin Clark enters that ecosystem, the system reacts, not by elevating her immediately, but by carefully containing her impact. This is why minutes matter. This is why who initiates the offense matters. This is why whose voice carries weight in huddles matters. These details reveal whether merit truly drives decisions or whether power structures do. Because if this camp was purely about putting the best possible product on the floor, Caitlin Clark wouldn't be managed. She'd be unleashed. Instead, she's navigating a political environment disguised as a basketball camp. One where every decision carries implications beyond wins and losses. One where talent alone is not enough. And one where the true test isn't whether Caitlin can perform. She's already proven that. But whether the system is willing to let her. That's the real storyline here.